Let's welcome to the D&M Leasing, jump out to the D&M Leasing hotline. Switch gears a little bit. You can find him at Allbright NFL on the old Twitter X, whatever the hell we're calling it these days. He's a reporter at the Denver Broncos flagship at KOA, Colorado, BroncosCountryTonight.com as well. Let's welcome to the program, Mr. Benjamin Allbright. And Mr. Allbright, you've been a busy guy, not just tonight, but this week as a whole. What's the biggest thing? And you talked a little bit about a trade yesterday. We can unpack all of it. Biggest thing so far that you've seen, reported, or heard, not that didn't happen at Starbucks at the Combine this week.
Well, yeah, funny you mentioned that because I saw that too.
Did you?
It's been, yeah. It's overblown.
Okay.
It's big a deal as everybody's making it out to be. I'll just tell you that. Look, it's been a week. It has been a heck of a week. Got to keep your head on a swivel at Starbucks these days.
Well, you do.
I think that the biggest thing is probably something what you alluded to earlier in that I had tweeted yesterday. You know, kind of. I try to have fun with it. I'm not trying to be cryptic or vague or weird. I'm just trying to be funny with it because everybody's so straightforward and khaki pants these days. So I try to be a little more fun with it. But there probably is a trade coming to 1 from 3. I think the Giants, who are pursuing Aaron Rodgers as well, I think they're going to take multiple swings at trying to get this quarterback thing right. And they know that if they don't get it right, they're getting fired. So I think they're okay with trading away parts of the future in an effort to try to get it right now. And I think they're willing to sign Aaron Rodgers and try to pursue one of the quarterbacks from the draft there as well.
Benjamin, when you hear that, though, and you've been covering the NFL for a long time, when a team, a front office, and a coach are given the ultimatum, like, look, either get this right or you're done, doesn't that kind of lower the threshold a little bit for them to get a little reckless as far as what they might do to make a deal and get it done so that, hey, if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter because we're not going to be here anyway?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Because I think the way you look at this, if you're Joe Schoen, you're Brian Daboll, you say, hey, look, I mean, if we don't get this right, we aren't going to be here. Right. So we might as well get reckless, and then we'll just figure it out on the other side, right? And so that's, if we get it right, nobody's going to remember we got it right, and we can afford to try to figure it out then. So I get it. It sort of makes sense. Nobody's really talking about the Falcons, who last year went out and recklessly signed Cousins without the medicals, and then they got him in and saw that he wasn't prepared to play and had to go draft Michael Penix on top. And now they're stuck with they're going to be stuck with the Kirk Cousins cap hit once they eventually figure that situation out. And so, I think that there is something to winning the present because the future isn't very guaranteed. I mean, you could be a guy who was up for coach of the year, a couple of years ago, and then you get fired, 2 years later. So, I think that in the NFL and the way that it's designed and the way that we do things now, if you're not looking at 1 to 2 year windows, what are we even doing? Because you're not going to be here if you're not, if you're not winning.
What's the latest and greatest you're hearing about the Dallas Cowboys right now? We heard murmurs that maybe they would even are talking to the Titans about moving up to that pick. I don't buy that much into it. Obviously, they're trying to re-sign guys like Osa Odighizuwa, Jordan Lewis. What's kind of the buzz around the Cowboys right now who've kind of kept things tight?
Well, let me start with the first thing. I want to say something here because the national media and people have been laughing about this Brian Schottenheimer hire, and I'm not. I've known Brian for a while. Brian is a bright guy, and I think he's got a better skill set as a head coach than he does as a coordinator. So I'm bullish on Brian Schottenheimer as the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. People may not want to hear that, but I'm that guy. I put myself on the record with that. That said, as far as what the Cowboys are doing, I can confirm they called the Titans. I don't think they're actually going to trade to one, but they called. I mean, maybe that's just responsible in figuring out what the price tag is. If they're willing to move it to a division rival, maybe you give the Titans a little leverage, so they get a little bit more out of the Giants if the Giants are trying to move up. As far as what they could do in the draft, I mean, they're looking at running backs. They are. I know about you talked about re-signing on the defensive side. They do want to bring their players back, but they also know they've got to get inexpensive a couple areas because they've doled out some contracts, and they've got a contract they still have to dole out in Parsons, but they've doled out some contracts that are big money deals, and so that means you got to skimp somewhere. That's just the nature of the salary cap. So they're going to have to get cheapers, a couple of places. I do think there's a couple running backs they like in this draft. I think they've got to figure out exactly how it is that they're going to configure this offense going forward because it is going to be heavier in the run game than it has been previously. And so, that's the thing I think they're focused on.
Benjamin, talk to me about this right here. I've been asking all my colleagues the whole week about trying to figure out the Cowboys draft process, especially at the running back position that you just spoke about. The big hype has been Ashton Jeanty at 12. I think he's a great player out of Boise State, but I just think they have other needs. The kid Amarian Hampton out of UNC has gotten a lot of buzz recently. how would you kind of configure it if you were the Cowboys? Would you try to move back in the first round and still get a Hampton? Do you even think Hampton will be there later in the first, early in the second? Kind of, first of all, where's the stock on Hampton and Genty, and then what do you think the Cowboys should do moving forward with that information?
Well, that's a great question. And let's start with the Janty portion of it. I'm not sure Janty's going to be there. I think Janty's going to go 6 to the Raiders. We'll see. But they seemed pretty. They seem pretty intent on that, and they certainly want to develop their run game. From what I understand, they want to double dip in this draft on the running back. They may come away with a Janty and then get a Quinshon Judkins later as well. So we'll see. As far as Marion Hampton, I'm glad you mentioned him. That's a man crush of mine. I work out here in Denver, and I'm hoping the Broncos get him at 20. I don't think he's going to be here, but I hope that he lands here because I do believe that if he lands here, he won't get beyond them. He is a solid 6 foot, 220 running back, do it all guy. He can run, he can catch, he can block. If it wasn't for Janty's eye popping numbers, Hampton would be the best running back in his draft. So if you guys, I wouldn't be mad at you if you took him at 13. I'd be mad at you that we didn't get him, but I wouldn't be mad at you, as an organization. And there's a line of thinking now that, it used to be, well, we don't draft running backs, they're not worth it, all that kind of stuff. But the line of thinking in the NFL now is if you draft a running back in the first round, you got 5-6 years of cost control running back production you're going to get. You're going to get the rookie deal, the 5th-year option, and a franchise tag if you need it. And that's basically a running back's whole career. So the idea that you don't want to draft running backs early. The pendulum has swung totally the other way, and the NFL's now on the we should draft running backs early in an effort to keep cost control so we can spend at other positions.
You mentioned the Raiders going after Ashton Genty at number 6. Last I checked, they still got your boy AOC and Gardner Minshew. What are they going to? Look, I don't think it's a bad choice. I'm a Genty guy as well. I'd love to see the Cowboys grab him at 12. What the hell are they going to do quarterback wise though?
Well, they were all in on Stafford, and I'll tell you, that thing was closer than you think. As of yesterday morning, Stafford basically gave the Rams the ultimatum. Hey, I'm taking the Raiders' offer. They're willing to give you 2 twos. I'm taking the Raiders' offer unless you come back and give me my number.
Yeah.
And then the Rams got together last night, finished it out 6:30 this morning, got that done. As far as the Raiders go, I think they've now that Stafford is extended with LA, I think they're going Sam Darnold. I think that's their next target.
Really?
And so I think that's probably the direction they wind up. Both coaches have some familiarity with him a little bit. Chip Kelly, not as personal a connection, but Pete Carroll, both they're very familiar with Sam Darnold, what he's able to do. Would not be surprised if that happens. If it doesn't happen, they lose out on that one. Then I will tell you, Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll patched things up over the last couple of years. Wouldn't be surprised if that's a third target that they go for.
I got just a personal question on here. I don't know if anybody on the text line is going to care, but I got to ask now that I got you on here. What are the Colts going to do at quarterback? Obviously, the Anthony Richardson experiment hasn't really worked out. What do you see them doing? Are they going on we see a lot of these teams going the veteran quarterback route. Could you see them moving up? I feel like they're a team that's not really being talked about.
Yeah, so I talked to a little spot there on Radio Row there at the Combine. It was catty corner to the Colts team. I got a chance to chat with them a little bit. I think again, not reporting this, but I think based on conversations that I had, that they're looking at Trey Lance, bringing him in as a cost-effective option.
Really?
Quote unquote, have a competition with Anthony Richardson. It's, you get to say, hey, look, we're giving a top pick or a former top 5 pick a chance, but at the same time, you don't really think that he's going to push Anthony Richardson. If that doesn't work out after, then they could bring Gardner Minshew back and have a steadying hand as far as the veteran goes, because he won't be back with the Raiders. So I think that is their plan. I'm not 100 on that. That's just some conversation I had with some people at their little table over there.
Shane Steichen's an interesting character, right? I mean, look, that dude was balling that last year in Philadelphia. Obviously got him to a Super Bowl and had a good first year in Indianapolis. Is this really just a situation where the Anthony Richardson thing has really kind of plundered this franchise the last couple seasons?
I think it's a little more complicated than that.
Okay.
And just a full disclosure, again, I've known Shane for, 8 or 9 years. He's a good dude.
Yeah.
Smart football mind. A little bit of a goofball sometimes, but good
Aren't we
dude.
all?
And I'll say this. I think, hey, fair enough. But I think part of the problem there has been Chris Ballard. Chris Ballard is an extremely media-friendly general manager and gets a lot of cover because of that. But his drafting has not been great.
No.
And what he's brought in has not been great. And so, I think it's a combination of Richardson not being everything they expected, and then Ballard's drafts have let that team little bereft of talent, and they've got to figure something out there. I thought Ballard was going to get fired at the end of the year. He didn't manage to survive, so I was wrong on that one. But, we'll see. I think the leash with Irsay there is pretty short. And, with Richardson, man, that's funny. I mean, you're talking about a guy that pulled himself out of a game because he was winded. Lost a lot of cachet in that locker room after that. And so that's one of those things where, like I said, if you're bringing Trey in, that's one thing. But, to me, they need a veteran in there that can reestablish what a leader, a cultural leader is in that locker room. And I wouldn't be surprised if they brought Minshew back.
Speaking of losing cachet, kind of going to the combine, we've had a good amount of guys either last minute or we knew that weren't going to compete. Guys like Tet said he's not going to do a lot of stuff. McMillan out of Arizona, Kenneth Grant. We had Mike Green out of Marshall. What do you think about some of these guys that aren't competing that maybe are kind of in the middle rounds and guys that have been either rising or falling, them not competing in the combine? Do you think other GMs and personnel are taking this lightly, don't care? How much are they weighing that kind of stuff of not competing at these combine events?
Well, let me say a couple of things. First of all, you mentioned Mike Green in there. Mike's got some other stuff going on.
Yep.
He's got some red flags for off the field sexual assault, allegations from both high school and college, his first stop in college. He claims that, that he knows the truth and it's not what's out there. But I'll just say that teams have giant red flags there, and that's going to be something he has to clean up. As far as the rest of those guys working out, it is to the consternation of the league. I'll say this. Roger Goodell's pretty pissed. The league itself, that is trying to market the combine as a fan-friendly event and sell it to advertisers, is upset that, top quarterbacks aren't throwing, top people aren't working out, that kind of stuff. And I would not be surprised if in the coming years, maybe not next year, but in the coming years, there's some sort of rule that national scouting and the NFL come to that has, if you take a combine invite, you're here to work out. Just because they've turned it into such a marketable event, and now the advertisers are pissed that you don't have these people out there, Travis Hunter, Shedeur, like these guys aren't working out. So what am I paying the advertising for if people aren't watching because those guys aren't working out?
One more name to throw in there, Walter Nolan, who's been mocked to the Cowboys from Ole Miss, a defensive lineman. Any kind of update on why he didn't do any combine stuff?
He's another one that I think. It's interesting because this draft really doesn't have a ton of top-tier blue-chip talent.
Right.
You're talking about maybe 10, 12 guys, and then, this thing's fat in the middle, like from 13 to 100. There's not a whole lot of gap in between. And so I think the guys that think that they're in that top tier, and Nolan it does, he feels like he's in that top tier, feel like that they've got nothing to do but lose, nothing to do but hurt themselves, being up there working out. And so I think there's a bit more, even more this year, of a reticent attitude as far as wanting to work out and potentially lower yourself or diminish yourself, because if you're in that top tier and it's so small this year, you really don't have anything to gain, and everything to lose. So I get the mindset, but at the same time, I will say the league and teams are unhappy about it.
Real quick, because you're in Denver, kind of what's the feeling around the NBA as far as your Denver Nuggets are concerned? I mean, they've been on a bit of a roll here. And how surprised were you, considering you guys have got a, quote, what would you call him? Not the most shapeliest European guy on your roster. It turned out pretty good for Denver. The Luka trade, your thoughts on that?
Well, everybody was stunned by that. I can't remember what I was doing at the moment, but I remember thinking it was a joke. I thought Shams got hacked when it came through. I'll say this: the feeling in Denver was one of disappointment. Not that he's traded the Lakers, which is kind of a rivalry thing or whatever. Although the Nuggets have owned that mostly recently. I think the Nuggets are like, hey, wait a minute. If he was up for trade, we would have loved to have been in on that.
Yeah.
Because Luka and Nikola have a pretty good friendship, and so I think there's a little bit of that, like sort of a missed opportunity thing. I don't think that most Nuggets fans took it seriously. With the Lakers, they're like, well, he's on the Lakers, but LeBron's old. They don't have AD anymore. This probably doesn't move the needle. And then, of course, the Lakers play him the other night and beat the brakes off him, and Luka scores like 30 and has near a triple-double or whatever. Luka may be finding his groove. It may be something you have to kind of open your eyes, pay attention to, and say, hey. But I think the national perspective, and I'm sure you guys are aware of this, is that the Lakers sort of won that trade, whether or not that moves the needle for them as a franchise.
Last one here for me. If you were the Cowboys GM and the Cowboys brass, who would you pick in that first round and second round to make this team a better team next year?
Well, that's a good question. It obviously depends on who's there.
Sure.
But all things being equal, I think you look to with what they brought in terms of coaching Brian and what they brought in on the offensive side of the ball. I think you look to, again, try to fill out the offensive line, try to get that run game going, and you run it down people's throats. Become a power football team. Zig when everyone else is zagging, right? You've got Dak Prescott, you've got CeeDee Lamb, you've got the pass game sort of covered, right? So for me, what I would have become is in a division where on defense they're getting a bit lighter, and even in Philly where they run that Fangio defense, which we have up close and personal experience with here in Denver, it baits you to running the ball, right? It's designed to send the least amount of people as possible to go get the quarterback and drop everybody back into zones, and it baits you into running the football because of the safety depth. So I would be trying to build a bully ball on offense type of offense. Build a power run game when everybody else is getting lighter on defense and going to nickel and dime. Build a power run offense that teams are just not prepared to defend against, and do that. So I would be looking at the offensive line, be looking at the running backs, and see what I could do.
All right, real quick, I'll ask one more thing. You like I said, you're in Denver. I know you caught a couple Colorado games. Shedeur, not necessarily Shedeur, but Shedeur and Travis Hunter. Real deal. What your thoughts on how they're going to transfer to the NFL?
Well, Travis is the real deal as far as being an athlete.
Yeah.
He's just an insane athlete and a high football IQ football player. I don't know how much of what he did at Colorado translates to the NFL.
Yeah.
Everybody I've talked to thinks he's a corner with maybe some wide receiver packages in there.
Okay.
But it's wildly different. I mean, a college game, you just go out and out athlete people, right?
Exactly.
You got a 40 play playbook and you're trying to out athlete people. You get to the NFL and you get an NFL offensive playbook like Al Saunders' 600-page playbook. How are you going to memorize that while you're playing corner? And memorizing everything you need to do and developing the chemistry you need to on defense. So I think Travis winds up being a corner with 5 to 10 offensive plays, and they see if he can handle that. And if he handles that, you expand that. And if he doesn't, I think that fizzles out after a few years, and he's just kind of a corner in the league. As far as Shedeur goes, he's a high football IQ guy,
yeah.
and you'd expect that, coming from that family. I would say that the tools are, elite. I would say that, if you're comparing him to somebody, he's probably the closest thing to, Teddy Bridgewater before the injury. And I know that's not a glowing review.
Really?
He's not. Yeah, that's really what he is. I mean, he doesn't have the strongest arm. He's an anticipatory thrower. He doesn't use what athleticism he has. He doesn't use it to pick up yardage. It's to buy time. He's tough.
Yeah.
He played behind an absolute garbage offensive line. But he believes in himself a little too much. He'll squeeze the ball in a little too much. And he'll change, he changed the play a lot. We talked about no run game at Colorado. He changed the play from run to throws quite a bit when probably he shouldn't have, and got away with it because his dad was a head coach. So I think he's in for a bit of an awakening at the NFL level.
Phenomenal. Benjamin, absolutely incredible information and stuff from you. Tell the folks at home where they can find you at on the X and socials.
Oh, yeah. Unfollow me on Twitter at Allbright NFL. It's a dumpster fire. I wouldn't follow me. And if you want to listen to the show, Broncos Country Tonight on KOA, it's 8:50 a.m. We're heard in something like 30-something states and, 15 countries or whatever. So we appreciate everybody listening.
Absolutely. Benjamin, glad to talk to you for the first time. I've been a follower of yours for a long time. Glad to make it happen. And let's do this again when the draft hits.
Anytime, guys.